side. Today we're talking about the Trek Stache 9. It's a 29 plus hardtail and a nice one at that. I had the pleasure of riding this bike this week. It's my friend Nico's bike. He let me borrow it while he was out of town. Well, we talked a while back about Weston's Surly Krampus, which is not suspended up front. It's a great bike and kind of more neutral handling than this bike. This bike I found to be a little bit more laid back with the suspension. Climbing hills, it's not as aggressive on the uphill, but it's definitely more aggressive on the downhill. That being said, I found it to be an extremely good climber. Lots of traction out back, lots of traction out front, and it didn't wander quite as much as I thought it would. The Manitou fork up front, a lot of people have asked me about. It works very well. It's very stiff laterally, very compliant as far as the suspension goes. It works really well. I was able to just fly down hills that had lots of technical terrain, and it was no problem at all. It does feel a lot different than a regular hardtail, 29 hardtail or 27.5 hardtail. You definitely don't need to pick your line as much. That being said, you can't be as surgical with your line choice. You rolled over stuff that you could normally kind of shoot through, pass through small gaps in a rock garden or what have you. So it's a little bit different. Also going around corners is a little bit different too. It doesn't rail corners as well, I found. It's very stiff laterally, but there's something about it where these big tires, you are kind of leaning into the turns, but it doesn't feel like you're railing corners as fast. That being said, I found that I was actually going faster than I felt like I was going. So take that for what it's worth. It's a very fast bike. I would not hesitate in a moment to choose this as a race bike, especially if there's a gravity oriented portion of the course. It's got pretty big rotors, XT brakes, which are more than suitable for any kind of gravity challenge that I would put it up against. Going back to the Manitou fork, it's like I said, it's very rigid laterally, but it comes kind of from the heritage of the Manitou Dorado, which is a really famous downhill fork, and it's got a bunch of technology that I am truthfully not too familiar with. The lockout worked pretty well. It wasn't the firmest lockout I've used before, but it worked really well on the climbs. Some of the specs on this bike you're not seeing from stock. You're seeing a different dropper seat post on this, different ergon grips, ergon saddle, different chain ring up front, also some accessories, some bottle cages. Nico's got his Lezyne pump on here and Lezyne saddlebag. With all of the accessories, including my Crank Brothers candy pedals on here, it's weighing in right at about 30 pounds, just under 30 pounds as you see it. So it's pretty decent for having everything that it does on it right now. The fork weighs a couple pounds more than my rigid steel fork, and a couple pounds more than like the Surly Krampus fork and some of the other 29 plus rigid forks that you would find out there. They're steel. So it didn't wheelie quite as easily as some of those rigid 29 plus bikes out there. That being said, even with a heavier fork on it, I was able to get it up and wheelie it, and it was actually very stable riding it in the wheelie. And I think that's in part due to this rear wheel being just tucked in there. You can see that they have a bent seat tube there. It's actually kind of squished down here. I don't know if you can see it from that side, but it does have this elevated chainstay as well, which is really interesting. I haven't seen that since like the early 2000s or late 90s, but I think it's a really good design for this type of bike. The reason they do that is to tuck that rear wheel in there and still have clearance for the tires and for a chain ring up front. This one is a single chain ring only possibility. There's no mount for a front derailleur. Another thing worth mentioning is the 11-speed drivetrain on this bike. You're not seeing that too much on too many bikes, and for it being available right now with the wide range 10 to 42 tooth cassette on the back, it really does make it versatile. It's a great climber. It has pretty good range. My buddy Nico put a wolf tooth ovalized chainring up front, and that's a pretty good combination. I felt like I was starting to run out of gearing on, the fastest kind of downhill but really flat kind of sections where I was pedaling super hard. But on a 1x drivetrain, that's pretty good. One of the really cool things about this bike is the sliding dropouts that they have here. I don't know if you can see it too well from that side. From this side you can see it pretty well. But they put those sliding dropouts on there, and the adapter for the rear brake caliper is also mounted on there. So really easy to set this thing up single speed if you want to, but also the cool part is that you can set it up with any different type wheels that you want out there. Any different platform will work on this bike. Besides a true fat bike, this fork up front has 3.4 inches of clearance, so it'll fit pretty fat tires, even fatter tires than they make right now for the 29 plus. But it will also fit 27.5 plus wheels and tires on it, and of course just regular 29er wheels and tires, which I think is a pretty good idea, because a lot of guys kind of have come to this point where they want kind of a one bike quiver, and yet they want it to do everything, and one bike's not going to do everything. But if you have different wheel sizes, you'll get a little bit closer, I suppose. I ride a rigid steel bike with a 29 plus front, my Salsa El Mariachi, and this bike is a lot stiffer. That being said, it's got a lot of volume on the tires. Actually, the tires are the same tires I'm running up front on my El Mariachi, and it definitely feels a little bit stiffer in some respects, but having a 29 plus tire on the back, it definitely dulls some of the harsh, smaller bumps that you hit. And having the fork up front, it's definitely more plush, especially when you get up to that 10 mile an hour range or so. When you're headed downhill, it can get somewhat harsh on the rigid bikes. Comparing this to something like the Surly Krampus, I would say that the Surly actually felt more playful and more compliant in many ways, but the Surly Krampus isn't going to hold its own when it comes to faster descents where you have some real technical terrain that this fork is going to handle really well. One other thing is the retail price on this. It's around $3,800 MSRP. I think you're probably going to be finding it maybe around $3,500 if the demand slows down a little bit. I know that these have been flying off the shelves and hardly anybody is able to actually see one in person. So I feel very fortunate that Nico let me borrow this for the week. But it's a good bike. I'd say for $3,500, especially if it's going to be your only arrow in your quiver, so to speak. I say it's a great bike. That's about it, I guess, on the Trek Stache 9. Rides really well, like I said. Good climber, really good descender. I think it would be improved a little bit for my liking if I was able to have it be kind of oriented towards more long distance bike packing, things like that. But you know what? The person that's going to be buying this bike is going to want a bike that's fast and probably isn't going to be riding it all day long on every ride they go on. Yeah, it will last on an Epic for sure. It'll probably keep you pretty comfortable, more than an aluminum 29er would, aluminum hardtail 29er would, I'm sure, with the extra volume you get in the 29 plus tires. But it doesn't have a whole lot of room in the triangle here. You can only fit the shorter bottles in there, and probably couldn't fit too big of a frame bag. And there's other things that, you know, I would look for that would be different as far as a bike packing or long distance bike goes. But that being said, for probably 90% of my rides, this would be a pretty phenomenal bike. I would have a lot of fun on it, and it is actually very versatile. All right, so that's the Trek Stache 9. It's 29 plus hardtail. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, and look for more videos from Ride Alongside coming real soon.